What if a child became emperor while an empire trembled on the edge of collapse? At just 8 years old, Kangxi inherited a throne surrounded by enemies, traitors, and ambition. Most believed he would be controlled or quietly erased before reaching adulthood. But history had other plans. The Forbidden City looked magnificent, yet danger lurked behind every golden door. Powerful regents ruled in his name, whispering orders and tightening their grip. Outside the palace, revolts burned, borders cracked, and rivals waited patiently. The empire watched, expecting the boy to fail. But Kangxi was not an ordinary child. Behind his calm eyes was a sharp mind, quietly observing everything around him. He listened more than he spoke, learned faster than anyone realized, and then, when no one expected it, he moved. What followed was not just a struggle for power, it was a battle of patience, intelligence, and unbreakable will. One wrong step could have ended his life and the dynasty itself, but Kangxi chose a path no one saw coming. This is the story of how a child emperor defied fate, how he survived betrayal, crushed rebellion, and reshaped an empire, and how Kangxi became one of history's most powerful rulers. But to understand his rise, we must return to the dangerous world he was born into. To understand Kangxi's rise, we must step into a restless empire recovering from conquest. The Qing dynasty was still young, ruling a vast land filled with tension and unresolved loyalty. Many regions accepted Qing rule only in name, while resentment simmered beneath the surface. The empire looked unified, but cracks ran deep. The capital stood as a symbol of order, yet power inside the palace was fragile. Kangxi's father had died young, leaving the throne to a child surrounded by powerful regents. These men governed in his name, but their loyalty was always uncertain. Every decision carried hidden agendas, and the young emperor was constantly watched. Beyond the palace walls, threats multiplied across the empire. Former Ming loyalists plotted rebellions, while regional warlords tested Qing authority. Borderlands remained unstable, and foreign powers observed closely, ready to exploit weakness. It was a dangerous moment for any ruler, especially a child. Yet Kangxi's upbringing was far from sheltered. He was trained in classical learning, military strategy, and statecraft from an early age. Tutors pushed him hard, knowing survival depended on wisdom and discipline. Quietly, the young emperor absorbed lessons that would soon shape his destiny. What no one realized was how closely Kangxi was studying his own court. He watched the regents argue, manipulate, and overreach their authority. Each mistake they made became a lesson for him. And slowly, patiently, Kangxi prepared for the moment when he would no longer be a figurehead. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the empire's future. A child sat on the dragon throne, underestimated by all around him. The regents believed time was on their side, but time, as they would soon learn, belonged to Kangxi. The moment Kangxi seized real power, the court felt the shift immediately. He moved with calm precision, striking before his enemies could react. The regent, oh boy, once feared by all, was suddenly arrested inside the palace. No one expected a teenage emperor to act so boldly, and fear spread fast. With the regents removed, Kangxi faced a far greater challenge beyond the capital. Powerful regional rulers, known as the Three Feudatories, controlled vast territories and private armies. They ruled like kings while claiming loyalty to the throne. Kangxi knew this balance could not last forever. When rebellion finally erupted, the empire shook from south to north. Armies clashed across cities, rivers, and mountain passes. Supplies ran thin.
Generals argued, and defeats tested the young emperor's resolve. Each decision carried enormous risk, and failure could mean total collapse. Kangxi refused to retreat or negotiate from weakness. He studied maps late into the night, questioning commanders and adjusting strategies himself. Slowly, the tide began to turn as rebel strongholds fell one by one. But victory came at a heavy cost, and the war dragged on longer than anyone expected. Even as internal threats burned, danger loomed along the borders. In the north, rival powers tested Qing defenses, sensing opportunity. Kangxi responded by leading campaigns, enduring harsh weather and long marches with his soldiers. He was no longer just an emperor behind walls, but a ruler seen on the battlefield. Yet with every victory came new doubts and unanswered questions. Could the empire survive constant war without breaking apart? Had Kangxi pushed his rule too fast, too far? As the smoke of rebellion lingered, an even greater test awaited him, one that would redefine his legacy forever.
Just when the empire seemed stable again, an unexpected silence spread across the court. Victories had been won, but peace felt fragile and uncertain. Kangxi began to realize that conquest alone could not hold such a vast empire together. The real danger now was invisible, hidden within governance, loyalty, and belief. Rumors whispered through the palace halls of secret resistance and quiet dissent. Scholars questioned Qing authority, while officials feared reforms that threatened their power. Kangxi listened more than he spoke, studying faces as carefully as battle maps. But which voices could he trust, and which hid dangerous ambition? Then came a turning point that surprised even his closest advisors. Kangxi chose knowledge as his strongest weapon, not fear or force. He invited scholars to debate openly, encouraged science and learning, and supported massive cultural projects. No one expected an emperor forged in war to lead with intellect. Yet this choice carried its own risks. Could openness weaken imperial control instead of strengthening it? Would ideas unite the empire or tear it apart from within? As Kangxi pushed forward with reforms, the fate of the Qing dynasty hung in a delicate balance, waiting for one decision to tip it forever. Kangxi's long reign slowly revealed the results of his bold choices. The empire stabilized as borders were secured and internal rebellions faded into memory. His emphasis on administration, learning, and law created a system that could endure beyond his lifetime. Power was no longer held by fear alone, but by structure and trust. Under his rule, China experienced prosperity that touched cities, farms, and trade routes alike. Taxes were reformed, corruption was punished, and officials were held accountable. Kangxi understood that a strong empire depended on ordinary people feeling protected, not oppressed. This balance became one of his greatest achievements. Yet his success came at a personal cost. Endless responsibility weighed heavily on him, as rivals, family tensions, and succession fears never fully disappeared. Kangxi ruled longer than most emperors, but his certainty about the future always remained just out of reach. Even a powerful ruler could not control time or legacy. In the end, Kangxi reshaped what it meant to be an emperor. He proved that strength could coexist with wisdom and authority with humility. His reign became a model studied for generations, not because it was perfect, but because it showed how leadership could evolve with the world it governed. When Kangxi finally faded from the stage of history, silence replaced decades of command. The empire he left behind was vast, stable, and deeply shaped by his decisions. Yet one question lingered in the air.
Was his greatest victory power or restraint? History remembers both. Kangxi ruled longer than almost any emperor, but his true legacy was not time alone. It was the balance he sought between force and fairness, tradition and change. He understood that an empire survives not by conquest alone, but by earning loyalty. That lesson still echoes far beyond his era. Today, Kangxi stands as a reminder of what leadership can become under pressure. He was not flawless, yet he adapted, learned, and endured. His story challenges us to ask what kind of leaders shape history in our own time. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to subscribe to History Hub for more cinematic stories that bring the past to life.